Hi, welcome to Healing the Trauma Within. In this session, I am speaking with Brenda Bailey about the definition of insanity and trauma and the relationship between the two. But before we dive into this really juicy topic, let me tell you about Brenda. Brenda Bailey, known as the Cellular Reprogrammer, is a theta healing master and instructor who's owned and operated a seven-figure business and has been an entrepreneur for 28 years. She's blended her practical experience as a successful entrepreneur along with the theta healing practices that allow people to have quick income transformations in her Elevate to Accelerate program. Brenda's work in the world is to help you break down the barriers to help you heal and get into your true zone of genius, serve the people who need your gifts, and make lots of money doing it. So welcome, Brenda.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be in this summit and I don't love trauma, but I love the subject of trauma and helping people navigate it.
Right. Yeah, I get what you mean. It's unfortunately it is such a needed topic in the world, especially right now with the pandemic and everything. It seems to have really skyrocketed the amount of people who are having triggers and needing help and that kind of thing. So yeah, it is a much needed topic. But let's talk about the definition of insanity and trauma. Now I know what the definition of insanity is, so why don't you tell us?
I'll preface it, right? So in my own words, right? Okay, so I have to say I'm smiling, but I'm laughing a little bit because I'm seeing Tracy's kitty kind of like moving around in the back, which makes me laugh because this is hashtag real life, guys. So we, we're zooming from where our animals and our children are, and this is just it, and it's perfectly imperfect, and you gotta love it. So anyway, so the definition of insanity is repeating the same behavior and expecting a different outcome. And what I really find about this is for people who suffer trauma, what ends up happening is that they don't make decisions from a non-reactionary, non-fear place. Right. So what ends up happening, and then a lot of us disassociate. So we don't really take all of the information that normally we would, if we were looking at a math problem or something like that, we would see the patterns, we would see what was going on, and we would base like the next step would be on this. But for most of us, when we go into that place of reacting, which typically comes from trauma, then we just end up repeating that same mistake. And then we look at each other, at ourselves, and just are so merciless with ourselves because we know it's more painful when you're brilliant. It's more painful when you're intelligent because you know better. And yet you're not sure why you keep doing it. And that's what I find.
Yeah, you're singing my story.
And my story as well. That's the thing that I think that for most of us who can work with trauma. So for myself, what I realized, so I've been an entrepreneur for almost 29 years. I'm pushing into that 29-year mark. And yes, if you're wondering, I started when I was 5. I'm just kidding. But we move along there. And what I realized when I had, started, I was a workaholic, which again, I think is also I'm not saying that everybody that's a workaholic suffers from some type of PTSD or trauma, but it is a great way that people, it's one of their coping mechanisms to be productive, to work. And that's why, why Tracy has created this summit, because the pandemic, most people slowed down and that wasn't comfortable for most people. And being alone or being with themselves or not being able to distract themselves are all these things that came up for everybody. So I know for what I saw in a direct correlation very early in my career was that I would go to these, I always consider myself a student of the universe. I just love to learn things. I love to learn things. I love to understand how the human mind works. I love to understand why do I do what I do, because I've had a lot of questions around that. And what I discovered is when I did really deep, and I'm talking deep, like painful, like screaming, like sobbing, wailing type work, I would pay a lot of money to go do these retreats and these workshops. My income would double. So I knew that there was a direct correlation with me being an entrepreneur and how my business was running and producing was related to me and my wounds and my traumas and my non-forgiveness. So I saw that very early, but I, like, in my own integrity, I could never recommend that somebody do it the way that I was doing it at that time, because it was expensive, it was time consuming, and it was painful. And what we know now is that there are other ways to approach trauma.
Absolutely. It's still painful, no matter how you look at it. There's going to be those moments. But it's funny, well, not funny, interesting that when you shift your energy, the universe kind of shifts with you and things start to happen, things start to change. Like you noticed with your business. I've noticed that as well. I've noticed it in other areas too, that when I shift my mindset, I shift my energy, I shift my way of thinking, I stop repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I get different results.
Absolutely. And this is the thing, and I love Albert Einstein. So for those of you who don't know, Albert Einstein is the one who created the definition of insanity.
Right.
He also has another saying that is, you cannot solve a problem in the same way that it was created. And unfortunately, for most of us, our reaction to trauma is all kept in our brain. And that's why a lot of processes that have to do with talking, old style coaching, old style therapy, that's a lot of talk. Because for a lot of people, we're not sure why we're traumatized. We just know we are. Or somebody will actually diagnose us going, well, and they can't help us because we can't tell them what it is. Why? We can't tell them why. And a lot of things don't work unless you can say why. But the deal is that, again, we're trying to solve it from our head. And that's just not going to work for most people. And that was another thing when, I have 13 different certifications in integrative healing. It's been me working on me, self-awareness, self-improvement for the last 30 years. And what I have discovered probably about 15 years ago is that you have to go beyond the conscious and subconscious mind in order to heal. And we are a traumatized society. So to look at trauma and say it only happens to people who've been in war or in accidents or have been physically, attacked or sexually attacked or violated. It's those for sure, but it's so much more. Trauma is relative. And what ends up happening, so what I like to consider myself as a little bit of a disruptor, Tracy. And what I want, if you hear anything, most of the trauma that people feel that they're avoiding is not theirs. It's either that they've inherited it or they've brought it with them. And then we've created this life that we can say, oh, it's because of this. So that's why with, the technique that I use is actually really helpful for people, because it doesn't matter, whether it happened here or whether it happened there, we cover it in that inherited, in that, what you've brought with you. We call it history. And we resolve it, and it's just as if it's always been, because what ends up also happening as well is that most of the pain that you're feeling is not the pain of your trauma in the moment. The pain of your trauma in the moment, even though it's horrific, and please don't misunderstand, it's not my intention to discount it. What it does is that it's manageable for you, but it's all the other that is compounded with it that makes it overwhelming, and what causes us to disassociate or have, what other coping that you do and what other ways you do it. And it also messes with your, your brain a bit.
Oh, trauma definitely messes with your brain. That I can guarantee. Um, I've got trauma brain, and I've also got widow brain, what they call widow brain, from when my husband died. And my memory has gone from being fantastic to, if I don't write it down, I don't remember it. You know, and it's hard, but it's just now it's part of my new normal. Um,
And it doesn't have to be a new normal. I'm going to say that to you, Tracy. It does not have to be a new normal.
oh, well,
So
I'd like to hear how.
I want to say that to y'all because, we, again, we're all just doing the best that we can and navigating with what presents itself. And having done this work for 15 years, and really, like, what I really realized, like, why people start making a lot of money with me is because I resolve their trauma. Like, that's not how I market it, because people really don't care, like, as long as you get the results, people are like, that's cool. And I've had many people say, I don't really understand what you do, but it works. And what I know is that because with trauma comes non-forgiveness, and you can't go to therapy or pray that away. Everything has to be changed on a cellular level and go beyond the mind. And what happens a lot of times with people who I work with, just to give you an example, is I do an intro session. So, and I created that because I wanted to say, I really don't believe in creating systems or programs that cause people to have to work with me, right? I want to know that, like, I can help them in one session and send them on their way. And if they, and then people will either refer people, if, because of their experience, or they'll want to learn the technique, or they'll want to say, what else can you do? If you can do that in 90 minutes, what else you got, right? And so I go ahead and answer that question for them. But the thing is that with that forgiveness and with that trauma, it holds everything in place. And then in our brains, we're constantly going, oh, I need to be happy. Oh, I need to remember. Oh, I need to, function in my life like a regular, like a normal, whatever that is. But a lot of people use that word, like a normal human being. I need to be happy. We keep all these thoughts in our brains of how we are supposed to be. So when you clear things on a cellular level, the heart and the mind, the brain and the heart, will just follow instantaneously. It doesn't take a lot of work to work out of trauma. It just takes, I have people all the time who, again, human nature, we have to do it the hard way, or we have, if it's, no pain, no gain. And we reach a point where we have mercy and we say, love it, tell me something that's easier. Tell me something that's painless. And I'm open to it now, because even going through all that pain, even doing all that work, I'm still not where I want to be. And so this actually just allows it to instantaneously happen. And what happens is that your mind clears. So all of those stories, all of those traumas, because with trauma, we reloop it. Something happens, we reloop it in our brain. So when you can clear that out, it opens it up. It gives us a space to remember things. It gives us a space to be more creative. It gives us a space to actually be more abundant and amazing manifestors, because that's what we're intended to be.
Now, I'm sure everybody's listening going, Brenda, what the hell are you talking about?
You're speaking crazy, girl. Yeah.
You want to clarify this for us, because you keep talking about this thing. What is this thing?
Okay, so what I do, sorry, I always try to be very, like, I just want to give you information. So if Tracy wants me to give you more information, I'm more than happy.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about your modality, because one of the things that I want people to get from this summit is the different ways and techniques that are out there for them to heal. Absolutely. It's not, our healing journey is not cookie cutter. So what might work for one person may not work for another.
Right. And I always say there are many roads. Mine's just the easiest and quickest. We can hear my cat in the background now, so sorry. Mine, I just have found after 15 years and after 30 years of being on my own journey, and after 15 years of doing this professionally, that this is the quickest and easiest. And and I have to say that the modality that I use, not everybody uses it in the way that I use it. because I wanted to use it for my own spiritual and emotional healing. And this technique is called theta healing, so THETA. If you Google it, you're going to find that it's a lot about physical healing. Again, physical issues also come from trauma, right? Because we hold it in our bodies. So there are so many things that come as a result of it. But if you can get to that Junga piece, that core piece, which is what I've been doing for the last 15 years, it's what I've practiced doing. It's what I've done with my clients. This is my full-time gig, so to speak. I just have found, and I've gotten good at it. And so what theta healing does, so people can tell me how they think and how they feel, but what you create in your life is what you believe. All the information that's out there is that you have to do this through your brain. You have to think about this. And so, like if you just, do affirmations, if you just do a vision board, it'll just, and you focus on that, it'll change. Yes. But you have to keep that thought in your brain 24/7 and really focus on it. And people don't have that type of time or energy. They've got other things, right? It's not just a life of affirmations or vision board.
Right.
They've had things. We live a life. We have kids, we have relationships, we have jobs, we have companies, we all have different things. So when you actually change, because according to theta healing, your traumas, your non-forgiveness, your beliefs are held at a cellular level. Mm-hmm. So when you can bypass the conscious and the subconscious mind, which is what theta healing does, and makes the changes on a cellular level, it's as if it's always been. And so the heart and the brain just follow. And what's really cool, and I will tell you, for most people that I help, they're not aware that I've helped them, because it's as if it's always been, which is a beautiful place. I don't need to have credit for what I'm doing. I just want people to have easier, happier lives and painless. I mean, not that you're not going to experience pain at all. Life happens,
Sure.
car breaks down or whatever. But what you'll notice is that your reaction is different, or there's no reaction, because again, with trauma, we lower our tipping point for reaction. So we're constantly reacting, constantly, and it feels like a lot of chaos. And then we get in our mind and we're like, we need to not do this, but that's a big task. So when you change it, and it happens instantaneously on that cellular level with theta healing, it's just different. And who notices? Your kids, your significant other, your the people that you work with. And with women a lot, what ends up happening is somebody will say, did you change your hair? Are you wearing your makeup differently? Because you just look different, right? Because people, again, we don't realize like how much, and it's just an energetic thing, right? We have trauma and it kind of makes us a little darker. So then when things clear, it's lighter. And my family has a medical background, so I've worked with a lot of MDs, psychiatrists as my clients, after I did this, and they just look at me and go, do you know how long that would have taken in traditional psychotherapy? And I'm like, I know, because we don't have to know the why with theta healing. We just need to know what's going on and what you would like, and then you can fill it in between. Now, I say this with anybody, I know Tracy's anybody that you work with, like you're watching this summit, you're hearing from a lot of people, you vet people. You have to feel them out, see who's right for you, see what technique or what process will be best for you. I can't say that enough. It's within any, as an entrepreneur, coaches that I hire, right? I vet them. I find out like, what is their background? What can I expect? Do I resonate with them? I think that's so important. So I just want to, say that I may not be your theta healer, and that's okay. Somebody else may, or another process or another technique that you've heard about through this summit may be, but make sure you're working with the right person who resonates with you.
Absolutely. Who has your best interest at heart. I was going to say that theta healing sounds like a great way to disrupt those patterns that we get stuck in that causes that definition of insanity that we trauma survivors like to live with.
Absolutely. So, because, and thank you for bringing that back around, Tracy. It's a loop. We get caught in a loop. And that's what ends up happening with trauma. So
Yeah.
when you can disconnect that loop and you just do it differently, and you're not thinking about having to do it differently, it just is. I always loved, I had this one client one time, and she's one of my favorite stories to tell. She had a session with me. I do this 90-minute intro session, and I ran into her and I was like, hey, how's it going? And she's like, yeah, I don't think that session worked. And I said, oh, okay, how's it going? You know, like, so what's new, right? And so she's telling me about her new boyfriend, her new dog. She moved. She did a, vocal performance. And when she said that, because I don't remember sessions, I always tell people you have complete anonymity because I don't remember sessions. And I just went, didn't we work on stage fright or performance anxiety? And I went, oh, wow, that all sounds great. And then she just looked at me and she went, oh, right? Because, and then when I, again, when I started to recall, I was like, wait a minute, she hasn't dated in 10 years. Wait a minute, she's hated where she was living. Wait a minute, she's always wanted a dog in her adult life. And she was scared to do, she had a great voice. She was scared to, all of a sudden she started having some stage fright, which again happens with trauma. All of a sudden, something that wasn't a problem becomes a problem, So she had stage fright, and it was like all gone, and it had been as if it had always been. And so she was just doing her life differently. And because she didn't have to think about it, or it wasn't painful, or she didn't have any homework to do afterwards, or any of that, she just didn't think it had worked. But then when she had to list what had changed, like in the last 30 to 45 days, she was just like, because trauma prevents us from taking action as well, because we get caught up in that, we don't have the bandwidth. Trauma takes up a lot of our bandwidth, so we only have room for so much. And I think, if anything from this, it's, you're not alone. And that's what I love about the summit. You're not the only one. Trauma is relative, so stop comparing. Well, I can't be traumatized because mine's not as bad as Tracy's. Well, I prefer not to compare, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to talk about, I don't want to say mine's better or worse, right? It's relative. We all suffer from PTSD in some level. We're a traumatized society. So, yours is no better or worse, or you don't have to, you don't deserve to heal it, because yours isn't that bad. Well, what if it could be better? Like, what if it could not be at all, so that not bad, didn't affect you? And it's just to let you know that there are other ways. So what we know, we're in a day and age where, quantum energy is out there, and it really can accelerate and facilitate things that we couldn't do ourselves. I mean, we only use 11% of our brains, folks. To rely on everything that it does for us, it's a big task. So,
yeah. Well, Brenda, thank you so much. This has been super interesting. And I definitely want to look into this a little bit more myself for my own healing process. But thank you for coming on and sharing your modality and your insights with us. I really, truly appreciate it.
Well, and I know that, there's going to be ways to be able to contact me. I always tell people, please, if you just have questions, I'm happy to answer them. And if I'm not the person, believe me, I've been around for 30 years. I've been around a lot of different modalities. I can, I'm happy to navigate you or make a recommendation. I'm not a, like, this is, it's been the most amazing thing for me. And it's, one last story. I know but when I learned this, I always say I have one sibling. We come from the same background, right? So I know her pain. And with everything that I did, with all the expense and everything, I would always just call my sister, tell her about my, my experience, and say, do you want to do it? And she'd be like, no, thank you. I mean, she had done traditional therapy. She did some other things. She was like, I'm good. Took a theta healing class. There was another one that was going to be offered. I was going to be a teacher's assistant because I was like, I think I found something really good here. Called my sister, asked her if she wanted to take it. And I always offered to pay as well. So please understand, I wasn't just saying like, will you come do this? I was like, will you do this and I'll pay for you? So I was like, will you do this? would you like to do this? And she said, yes. And I didn't ask any questions. I was like, I just registered her. And the first day of class at lunch, one of the other students turned to her and said, Bonnie, why did you choose to take this class? And she said, the difference that I've seen in my sister. And I looked at her and went, I said some bad words, I'm not gonna lie. Are you kidding me? With all the money, time, and energy that I've spent in these last like 10 years, you're telling me that you saw a bigger difference in the last 30 days. And she looked at me and she goes, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. And I went, and that's when in my mind, I said, I think I found the thing that I'm looking for. So sorry, I had to end with, because I just think it's, we don't realize it. Again, with this type of process, you don't realize it, but the ones who are closest to you do. And they're confirmation and validation. And that's also speaks to it just being easier. So please, if you have any questions, if you have any, anything, and also in my free gift, there's going to be, I give you a little taste of it as well.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you again. And listeners, thank you so much for joining us in this session. And we will talk to you in one of the other sessions.
All right. Thanks.